So,
There's not
recruiting and
really one.
retention coordinator.
I got you.
Okay, so. Okay. I'm ready to hit the gavel there. Library.
All right, we're still here, we're doing good, no issues, budget is good, staffing, we're fully staffed. So that's good. We had an estimate of 1,442 visitors for the month of August. August is pretty slow just because everyone has come in during summer reading and everything, but that's still a pretty good number. In August, we provided $66,046 worth of services. That is up. I sent Melissa the updated stats, but she didn't get them. So
Yeah, it's because
She's out this week, yeah.
Well, I sent them Friday.
Oh.
But,
She may have gotten them, but
yes. But that is up from last year. Last year. We had 37 participants for the adult summer reading program. That is actually up from last year also. I think we had about 25 last year. We will be doing a tech hour on Thursdays instead of a computer class because so many people are needing help with individual things. So that will run every Thursday from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. We are starting a silent book club. We will have its first meeting actually Thursday, this coming Thursday. At 5:30. Silent Book Club is you are not assigned a book. You bring what you're currently reading. You tell the group, hey, I'm reading such and such book. This is what I like about it. I didn't like it, that kind of thing. And then everyone goes around and talks about it or talks about what they're reading. And then you spend the rest of the time people who are uncomfortable reading things out of their comfort zone. It's good for people who have trouble carving out time to read. So we're looking at maybe 45 minutes of silent reading. But we're excited to get that off the ground this year. And yeah, so we're excited.
questions for Jennifer?
Will you send me those numbers so I'll have them for my minutes?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question to follow up to what we talked about earlier today. Can you explain to me and to anybody else who might want to know how the audio books work at the library?
Yes. So we have two different formats for audiobooks. We actually have a physical audiobook. Those are CDs. I know more cars don't have CD players in their car, but we do have audiobooks that are on CDs. You come check them out and just put them in like you would a normal CD. We also have our Overdrive Libby app. You can check out audiobooks digitally, like on your cell phone or on tablets or whatever device you have, and you can, on newer cars they have Bluetooth, and you can connect to your Bluetooth and it'll play over your car speaker.
But you could do it on a mobile phone or iPad
Yes.
or anything like that.
You do have to have a library card, and you have to download the app, the Libby app. It's in your Google store, Apple store.
And
So
is there a charge for those?
those are not a charge. Not if you have a library card, there's no
So
charge.
there's a broad library of books to
Yes.
choose from?
Yes.
That's interesting, good.
So, no, you don't have any late fees. The only problem is, even if you're not done, it will zip it off your digital device. So you'll have to go back to the end of the line if there's a hold on it. But I've never had anyone really complain that, yeah, I didn't finish it in time, that was my own fault. So, but yeah, we have the app and we actually have the physical
Good.
book, so.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jennifer? Environmental Services, Dale?
So everything's been going good. We've just been doing maintenance, trying to keep the old plant going. We've had little issues with our UV lights. So I've had to order some parts for those. And then our employees were fully staffed finally, all but like having another certified plant operator. But we are fully staffed besides that. And hopefully Chris will be back in October. he's doing well.
Good.
And the mayor got the numbers, I've done turned this in before he got the numbers for our plant and stuff. So I don't know if you included that in your,
I got something on it today.
other than that, we just been getting prepared for the rain events, Thursday and Friday. So all my guys will be on call if anybody's got an emergency.
Okay. Any questions for Dale? Community Affairs Senior Services.
All right, things are going pretty well. We served just over 1,100 meals in August, at the senior center. And I have all the Monsters on Main registration on the website, and actually all the Christmas registration is on the website as of this afternoon. So that is all up. I know it's hard to think about Christmas right now, but we'll be here before we know it. So, in September at the Grand Hall, the BBC 100-mile race was this weekend. That went really well. They had 287 riders for that on Sunday, and I don't remember how many on Saturday, 60-ish for the time trials. So, but it was great. It was a great event. He reached out today and said that they want to come back next year and do it. So,
Great.
so that's great. Then tomorrow is the Liberty at the Grand Hall. That is the program for second graders. And they bring Lady Liberty in, and she does like a little presentation to second graders to teach them kind of like about government and how things work. It's really cool. If you're around in the morning and you want to come watch it, it's really neat. It'll make you feel like super patriotic, so it's really fun. And then the Shelby County High School homecoming dance is at the end of the month on Saturday. I think that's it.
Questions for Al?
Is that Liberty and Liberty, is that just for other milk kids?
So it's Wilsonville, Shelby, and Eldenville kids.
Don't they do it for other schools also?
Mm-hmm. They do. I think that the grant is for every second grade in Alabama. So in other places, they have the events at, you know, I think they're at some church in Vestavia, so they go all around to do it. It's cool.
Okay. All right, were there any boards to report?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, we had the library board meeting. We just continued with looking at our policies, updating those, trying to get those in before October 1st, you know, when the new fiscal year starts. But that's basically what we worked on at our board.
Park and Rec board met last night, had a good conversation, just basically where we are on the, current grants that we've been awarded. Maybe the grants that are coming down the pipe, potentially things to do with the Park and Rec grant through the county. So a lot of grant conversation. Talked about the local leads and where they are today, and just trying to bump off some ideas to where if these grants keep rolling in, where we want to put that money to use. So that's about it.
You guys talked about that land and water conservation fund again?
We talked about that last night, and we talked about possibly potentially using it for that phase 2 of the lighting project up there, or and that application starts in November.
I think so.
Phase 2 being the
Football
football
field.
field.
And
Ricky, how about the lightning detector thing?
yeah, and we can talk about that in the budget too. I brought up I don't know, a few months ago that I was sort of in a situation at the ballpark where lightning was nearby. You know, you talk to somebody that said it's 5, somebody's 8 or whatever. And with all the events that we do downtown, Liberty Day and Music on Main, and just a lot of outside events, I brought up the point about we need to have a common software to just sort of alert people to help the fire, EMS or whatever. Pelham just signed on with a company, and I think Chelsea uses it too. And basically, it's a service. They do them by boxes, and basically what it is, you put like a box at whatever location that you want to put them at. So say for instance, a box down here, the tennis courts and the softball fields, at the complex. You can put them at the art center. So basically, collectively, you would decide in the city. Well, lightning gets in within 8 miles, that thing flashes. And we adopt a policy to where if it flashes, we're done until it flashes another color. I talked to, a guy the other day. Those boxes are $2,000 to $3,000 up front to pay for them, and the yearly service is just, I think, $1,000. So I think that's something we need to strongly consider, because there's a lot of risk involved there. So that's one thing we need to talk about too. So.
Okay, we were gonna talk about the budget today. So at our last work session, made some adjustments. In fact, the only, I think, significant adjustment that was made at the last work session, and I believe I sent this out, I hope I did. If I didn't, I apologize. But at the last work session, I think we just decided not to make an adjustment to the sanitation or the garbage fee. Okay, and I believe that was the only major adjustment from the previous edition, or the only adjustment that we had made, as I recall. You guys, is that right? Sound right to you guys? And so what that did is that took us to this surplus of 1.7 months in the general fund. We've got a ample surplus overall, only about 86%. Our expenses are only about 86% of our funds available overall. But a lot of that is in restricted funds, which is the stuff down here at the bottom that's not highlighted. So the numbers came out for August, and I'm going to go back real quick so that you can see here. So we had a general fund cash balance of about $1.8 million, and that fell to about 1.6. Now, when the month of September is up, that could go back up. It fluctuates back and forth. But net, that was about a $200,000 change. So I decided I would go ahead and show that. So I didn't change anything else as far as, expenses or anything like that, other than this number had gone down to about 1.4. So I re-wickered and paid for some more of the capital expenses for streets and sanitation, public works facility, that sort of thing, out of gas taxes and the state capital improvement and the cemetery fund, as opposed to it coming out of the general fund, because that was taking this number right here. All of this stuff that's highlighted in green is essentially general fund cash. I mean, it has to be transferred into the general fund, but it's available to do that. So anyway, it made that number a little bit dicey, so I just said, okay, those things are restricted, they can only be used for those things, so I wickered that around. But other than that, other than sort of re-wickering that and updating it for what our current, and I updated all of these accounts with the exception of this one. I don't think we've got another statement since I got that number. So that's Regions Bank. Any questions on that?
Well, I know we talked about, in the budget meeting, and I talked about leaving the sewer increasing. I think that's a no-brainer with the cost of the sewer project. But after that last workshop, I sort of just did some high-level deal in terms of the sanitation thing, and just a couple high-level deals. The last 3 years of total activity, sanitation actually should be revenue generating, theoretically. But if you look at the budget over the last three, just the total, not the budget, but the total activity over the last 3 years, I mean, it's at a negative 108, 159, and 181. So I thought about that, and I thought about also too, and I did a little bit more digging too, and we haven't had a garbage increase in 8 years. Now collectively, I look at all that, and I don't even know that 46% increase of the dump fee is really taking its toll collectively on present day in terms of the loss of what we're taking. So if you think about it, every time we pick up a piece of garbage in a residence, we're 46%
In the hole.
in the hole, and when we, in every dump. So, you know, and I called around, you know, I made a mention to Ms. Lily's point, you know, and I think, you know, I don't like increased fees, but all this, and I say all this to say this, I think if you explain the why behind it, it makes very much sense. So you go back to 8 years ago, you take the 46% dump fees, and even if, I mean, we're not gonna break even, maybe even, until that 46% is made up by everybody. And I don't think we'll ever get there. I mean, that's a significant amount of money, but.
We didn't break even before they had it.
Yeah,
42%.
So I think,
Whatever the number was.
so I think, you know, we had talked about $1.50 increase, and I say the why behind that is because, to Ms. Lily's point, you know, you go back to where the county had their situation last year by that private company, I don't even know the name of it is. I mean, there's a lot of people that rely on this garbage pickup. A lot of people, I consider myself able, but there's a lot of people that are not able to do that. So let's talk about the alternative. So the alternative, if I don't think the city can go any more in debt on a service that people pay for. I mean, that's, you know. So you think about the alternative is, and I even mentioned in the meeting, I'll just be transparent about it, that the alternative to get rid of all this, not to worry about it, is you get rid of the garbage service. And to Ms. Lily's point, that's really not even on the table. And so I did some additional digging. I went through Waste Management's thing and I plugged in some addresses and whatever. And I mean, the lowest address that I got was like $22 for weekly pickup. But the highest I got was well beyond that. I mean, you get outside the city and all that other stuff, it fluctuates. And the private entities, I mean, they could say, okay, we're going to do an introductory rate of $20 this year. And next year that could spike up to 46%. And we don't have any control over that. So I think the conversation of getting rid of garbage is really off the table. Especially you run into our small roads, you run into those big trucks, and that just doesn't work. So I mean, after I did this analysis, I mean, by explaining the why behind it and increasing that fee $1.50, I mean, I think that's logical if we can, if you can explain the why, and that's the why, and the alternative to that, I think it's, I mean,
But I think-
like I said, every stop we make, we're 46% in the hole at that point.
But I think down the road, even if we do that, we gotta continue to get to that 46, or we're gonna continue to get deeper.
Yeah.
You know, and you're talking about from $18, I think 40-something% would be $7 more, period.
Yeah, I mean, and this is quibbling over little stuff. I remember the number being told to me by Chad Stroggins was 42%.
Maybe 42.
But to your point, you know, they've just done this new addition onto the landfill, and my guess is sooner or later, the cost of
That's
that's
right.
gonna get passed on to us as well. And I agree with you. It's just one of those things that you hate to increase the fees on everything because everybody's been dealing with the inflation and that sort of thing. But in my numbers were worse than yours. When I remember when this administration first came in, and this is all the sanitation, just net was about a $300,000 a year loss. And then it has grown to $450,000 a year. So I agree with all of you. So I can easily put that back in there. Now, I had suggested that because I want to give people notice that we make it effective 1 January and not 1 October. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, the other thing about it is, I mean, if it's just say just collectively it's 40%, I mean that's 40% deficit just in the dump fees. That's not the cost of doing business for gas and
That's right.
maintenance and so I mean we're still,
Which
I mean,
is a significant part of that
if you think
number I gave you.
if you think about it, it's more probably over 50%. And I mean that's sort of a shock deal. But again, I hate raised fees, but what I hate more than raised fees is not to be able to explain the why. So the why is what I mentioned. You go privatize garbage pickup, then you have an issue where the city cannot control that for their citizens, and you cannot control the fees, and it just catches on like wildfire. And again, I don't think we'll ever get to that. I don't think this department will ever, with all the costs and stuff, you'll never get to that, especially it'll become more of a difficult conversation, but, you know, it's at $18.50 now to go to $1.50. I don't think that's, to me, being able to explain it, I don't think that's,
Yeah.
I mean, it's,
So the towns in Shelby County that I'm aware of, the cities in Shelby County that I'm aware of, that, I can only think of one, and there's probably another that has its own, besides Columbiana, that has its own sanitation department. That's Alabaster. I think the rest of them all contract.
and I talked to them, and they are higher than we are right now.
Yeah, the last time I talked to Scott, he told me they were 20, but he wasn't sure when he said that. And going back to, the county switched over from Republic to Waste Management. And again, what Chad had told me at the time that they made that change is they were paying Republic $35 approximately a quarter, and they said it's going to be $35 a month. So they rebid the contract out, went to Waste Management. Of course, there was a lot of stuff on the news. Waste Management had some growing pains, but I haven't heard much about it since. So I'll put it back in there if you guys.
That's just my thoughts thinking the way, because the alternative is not worth, because nobody in the city controls the alternative.
Yeah.
And basically you'd be force fed with 60, whatever that rate may be, and I just,
Yeah.
and again, I go back to specifically what Ms. Lily talked about, the people that relies on the service to come right to their door to pick it up, regardless if that's what we do or not. That's really the benefit of everything, At the end of the day, I could take my trash to the dump if I needed to, probably, but there's people out there that really can't do that, and I think if you can just explain the why, I think it's logical. Just my opinion.
And if you take it to the dump, it's not gonna be cheap either.
No,
Actually,
it's
I
gonna
think it
be-
might cost you more.
It will cost you more.
Buy a truckload or trailer.
But, all right, I'm gonna add it back in unless there's some
Yes.
objections, and and I'll send out the details, and, if we need to come back together before, the next council meeting, we can do that to get things finalized, but if everybody's okay with what I send out, we'll be good to go. Okay, so, but this is the, elephant in the room that we haven't addressed yet, so I kinda wanted to go through this stuff. Had a conversation a few weeks ago with ADEM. Dale, you were participating in that call. And the guy who deals with the SRF financing through ADEM was on the call. And I had asked him if he could give us a pro forma amortization schedule so we could get an idea of what this thing was going to cost us. So we could address things like, how we're going to pay for it. And he said, "Oh, I can give you an exact schedule." So I had to needle him a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, and we got a schedule was it yesterday? I think it was yesterday. Yeah. And it wasn't the exact schedule. What he did is he provided us an amortization schedule for the city of Huntsville, who has an SRF loan at the same terms, but it was significantly lower than what ours should be. And so I just did some interpolation. I said, well, if it's that much for that amount, then it should be this much for 12.2. So just kind of the overview up here. So the cost of the project, the construction bid, after negotiations, we settled in at $14,488,000. The engineering fees associated with that is $531,000. So the total project cost is $15,019,000. Now we have been awarded from ADEM an ARPA grant of $2,762,000. We have actually spent some of that already for the engineering and the upfront work, some of the environmental analysis and studies that had to be done, et cetera. But that's included in the total cost there. And so that leaves us the SRF loan to pay for the balance, and that will be $12,257,000. Now, the SRF loans, the maximum term for those is 20 years. Now, the way the payments on the SRF loan are made is in February of each year, you make a interest-only payment, and in August of each year, you make a principal and interest payment. So I had done before, when I asked Eric, the guy from ADM, for the pro forma amortization schedule, I had just used a loan calculator like you would calculate a mortgage loan, put 1.99% in there for 20 years, and came up with an annual principal and interest of $751,000. Now, the SRF loans require us to demonstrate that we have the ability to pay 1.1 times whatever the actual payment is. And so 751,000, the 1.1 is 826. I think we talked about this at the work session, and I noticed that I had transposed the 6 and the 2. I had 862. The number is actually 826, so that was a transposition error. So then I took the SRF amortization schedule that I received yesterday and did the interpolation, and that comes up, and it's an average principal and interest, because as the balance goes down, the numbers change a little bit, and it starts out, I think, somewhere around 730,000, and then it goes up a little bit. And so I calculated an average each year of 740,671. So that's a little bit less than the calculator had come up with before, and an SRF obligation that we would have to demonstrate that we can pay of about $815,000 a year. So in the first year, first payment of principal and interest in August, if we were given the loan in February, and that was the assumption that he made, that we would be given the money in February, the estimated payment for principal and interest would be $613,898. And then it doesn't necessarily align with our fiscal years because it's based on the years of the loan. And the next payment would be in February, and that would only be a interest-only payment of $116,903, and I think that comes up to around $730. So that's kind of how all this breaks out. Now, there's other options that we have. He can break this $12.2 million up and say, give us half of it this in fiscal year 25 and half of it in fiscal year 26. And it's unclear to me, and we're going to have another phone call to sort this out, if that's going to basically be two loans. I don't think it is, based upon what he said. It's all still a 20-year loan. You're obligated, once we give it to you, for the full $12.2 million. And so, but as far as actually giving you the cash, they're going to go ahead and give us the cash, is the way I understood. It's not a drawdown type thing. They're going to give us, it might be, but anyway, we need to have another phone call to sort that out. They're going to give us half of it and then the other half, or they could give us all at once, he said. So, and I'm not sure what impact that's going to have on the payments. That's why we need to have that other phone call and sort that out. That's about all I know about that. Any questions on that? So the key here is this thing's got to be fully funded. The project does, and a contract awarded by December 31st of this year. Otherwise, it's kind of like the Wilton thing with the CDBG grant. They didn't have the balance of the funds to complete the project, and so they couldn't get that federal money, that CDBG, because they weren't able to pay for the whole project. we've got to demonstrate that we can pay for the whole project, or we're not gonna get the funds, and if we don't get it by December 31st, we lose the ARPA money, and we'll have to pay back what we have already received.
I'm gonna assume if they give a two-part payment, that the interest would be lower the first year.
That's my assumption too.
Not that we would pay it off. I mean, the loan, there's no way, but
Yeah, I would assume that too, but somehow, I understood him that, you know, we're obligated for the full 12.257 right when they give us the money for 20 years. So if we only took half of it up front, and then he gave us the other half a year later, am I accruing interest on that? I don't know. I just don't know.
well, if it says no, it'd be crazy to take it
Now,
off.
there's another way we can do. We can kick the can down the road, and we can defer the first payment for 12 months. So we can not make a payment until February of 2026 instead of making one in August of 25. But overall, the cost of the loan would be more that way because you're accruing interest. I can't remember what the difference was, but it wasn't a whole lot. It was like $100,000 over 20 years. But anyway, we could do that if we had a cash flow issue or something like that. So, and so we would need to sort that out as far as, and we can demonstrate our ability to pay for it with the sewer fees, which won't pay for all of it. And then the other part of it, we would either, we talked about the potential of a sales tax increase to make up the difference, or we would have to just take the money out of our general fund, which would mean we'd be cutting the budget elsewhere. But we need to, we don't have to sort that out. I don't think we need to sort it before we adopt the budget, but it'll be a big issue hanging over our head for the next, and we don't want to dawdle too much so that we can get it all sorted out. Make sure that we got the money and we can get the contract in place. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, I asked Charlene to put this on the agenda. I think everybody knows that I don't support this. And so I won't be sponsoring it or introducing it, but if someone else would care to do that. But before we talk about that de-annexation, I got a couple more things I just want to say. So the city council has complete authority to make the decision whether or not we want to de-annex this property. But by the statute, we're only supposed to do it if the public health or the public good requires that the corporate limits of such city or town are reduced. So if in the opinion of the council, the public health or public good requires the corporate limits of the town to be reduced, then we can do this. I've done I had one attorney tell me that because in the past we had not considered this when someone asked us to do it, and that if we changed our position and did do it, that we could open ourselves up to lawsuit. I think the potential of that, based on some of the research I've done, is very, very thin, but there is this little tidbit in there that says we could be liable as a city if the council abused its discretion relative to determining the public health or public good, okay? And this other stuff we talked about, I think the last time I showed you this bottom stuff and I deleted it, talked about where, you know, the probate judge would have to have a hearing, and then there might potentially have to be a vote. Well, I read it over and over and over again, and then I also, after reading it, talked to Bill, and you only have to have a hearing involving people who live on that property that's being de-annexed. Well, nobody lives there. So there is no hearing, and there's no vote. And so whatever the council decides will be the situation here. So just sort of, these are the corporate limits of Columbiana. Generally, the areas around this little green square here, these are the corporate limits of Chelsea. You know, I look back, I don't know how long our limits have been out there, but it's been decades. I went back to a map of 1990 and it was still out there, and I didn't go back further than that. This has only been Chelsea for the last, probably less than 2 years, but anyway, so just kind of so everybody can see what we're talking about here. We looked at this before. Rob bought this parcel, which is in Chelsea. He bought this parcel, which is outlined by, what's the name of that street? Weaver Creek. So he bought that, and this is just under 40 acres. This is about 27 acres. And this part's in Columbiana. When the first time he came before us, I tried to see if I couldn't find a win-win solution. As I understood it, what he wanted to do was combine this parcel, so it's basically one parcel that he could leave in his estate to his heirs. He also believes that there's a benefit by having them in one municipality, and also he had hoped that he'd be able to have one tax parcel. So he can combine that into one deeded piece of property, whether or not it's de-annexed, okay? But he cannot make it into one tax parcel because this property line right here is a section line, and so if it's in a different survey section, then it has to have a different parcel number. So, and we had tabled this before because we had the description of this entire parcel, but we didn't have the description of this, and to be able to de-annex it, to draw the map, you have to be able to describe what the new corporate boundaries would be. Well, I'm trying to go back here, guys. I apologize. So if there's, I don't know if you guys want to discuss it now or if somebody wants to introduce the de-annexation.
I'll introduce resolution 092401. It's de-annexing property off of Chelsea Road. It's approximately 7.04 acres.
I'll second.
Okay. So why don't we do a voice vote?
Councilmember Lilly,
No.
Rustin,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Phillips,
Yes.
Mayor Mitchell.
No. Okay, so it passes, what, 3-2?
Mhm.
Okay, it's done. Any other city business? We're not going to the Washington, I'm not going to the Washington fly-in. We did submit our one-page flyer, front and back, for the leave behind packet that they'll be having there. I did go to Congressman Palmer's mayor's luncheon last week, and all this stuff that's going on with the election and whatnot, so it was kind of like old news, having to listen to that get rehashed. I did learn something that I didn't know, and I don't know if any of you were aware of this, but in orbit above us right now, the Soviets actually have nuclear weapons on satellites that are in orbit, and I was not aware of that. And supposedly we are safe from them down here, and their purpose is to launch them in space and use the EMP to take out all of our communication satellite if necessary. But I found that kind of interesting. So share that little tidbit. You talked about Liberty tomorrow. Tomorrow, for most people, I think you know that it's the 23rd anniversary of 9/11. I think most of you probably remember where you were when the world stopped turning. I know I certainly do. It really changed things. I think it's getting far enough behind us where I fear that people maybe forget what happened, and we certainly don't want to let that happen. So, any questions?
All right, so, on the 12th, which is Thursday night, Flamina Main Street is doing their social at Just a Tish. They're recruiting new committee members. And then Friday, September 27th is the homecoming parade. And then Saturday night, the 28th, will be the dance at Old Mill Square at the Grand Hall. And then October the 12th is Discover Shelby Wine Festival Day. And that happens from 10 in the morning till 7 that night. So it'll be a good day.
What day is the Christmas parade?
Friday, December the 6th.
Okay.
First Friday.
Any other questions for Alan? Any questions or comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Meeting's adjourned.